The Senate will come to order. Senior Senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I would move that all House bills, and by the way, we're on page 19. I would move that all House bills on second reading on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 19 through 21, that's House Bill 106 through House Bill 585, that the rules be suspended and the second constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
It's on the first page.
The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the second reading of the titles of House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 19 through 21, that is House Bills 106 through House Bills 585, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are all the senators ready to vote? Have all senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The constitutional reading is dispensed with. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I would move now that said bills go by for the day.
The question is, shall the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on third reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day. $621 is not on the calendar. Madam Clerk.
There's too much going on at one time. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Madam President, before we move on to another section of the calendar, can we take up the unfinished business, which I believe was Senate Bill 621?
Madam Chair, Madam President.
The senior senator from Bath, Senator.
I would request that bill go by temporarily, at least until we have our missing member back.
Without objection, the bill will go by temporarily. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move that all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 23 through 50, that's Senate Bill 31 through Senate Bill 1080, be advanced their engrossment and third reading in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, and any senator desiring to move a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
The question is, shall the Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 22 through 50, that is Senate Bills 31 through Senate Bills 1080, be engrossed and advanced to the third reading in the block after the adoption of the amendments thereto, that any senator desired to remove a bill from the block do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill? Are all in favor of that motion say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 31, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with amendments and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Serval. Eastern Fairfax.
There you go.
That's right.
Madam President, I move the Judiciary Committee amendments.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 41, reported from the Committee on Rules with a substitute.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Staff.
Madam President, I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 48, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with amendment.
The senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the amendment.
The committee amendment be agreed to?
Yes, Madam, yes.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 87, reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
The senior senator from Western Fairfax County. From Virginia Beach, Senator D. Staff.
Madam President, I move the committee amendment.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 97, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the amendment from the Finance Committee be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from the Finance Committee be adopted? All in favor of that motion will say aye. The ayes, those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 130, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 206, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with an amendment, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Fairfax City, sorry, not Fairfax City, I got to get it right. From Eastern Fairfax City, Senator Sorrell.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd move the committee amendment.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 250, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the Madam President, pro tempore, I move that the committee amendment substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 280, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor. Senate Bill 304, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment, and there is a floor substitute.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I feel like Scott Serval right now. Madam President, with the recommendation that we reject the committee substitute, I now move the adoption of the committee substitute.
The question is, with the recommendation that the committee substitute be rejected?
Yes.
All right. The motion is that the committee substitute be agreed to. All in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The committee substitute is rejected.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, with the recommendation that we reject the committee amendment, I now move that the committee amendment be agreed to.
The question is, with the recommendation that the committee amendment be rejected, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The committee amendment is rejected.
All right. And now, Now, Madam President, I now move that we waive the reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the substitute be waived? All in favor of that motion? Say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading is waived.
I now move the floor substitute and speaking to that motion, Madam Clerk. Madam President.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, just really what we did was a little bit of wordsmithing. The bill is still the same. As it came out of committee, basically what we're trying to do is add 2 more data points where we can determine what the euthanasia rate is of those animals, companion animals, dogs and cats that are turned into our receiving shelters, and determine specifically when they're brought to the receiving shelters by either police or local authorities or the owner with the request to euthanize. So this just clears that up very concisely now, so there's no question as to what those responsibilities are for those receiving agencies. And for those reasons, Madam President, I now move that the floor substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? I'm sorry, we have the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Parliamentary inquiry, Madam President. On this bill, the substitute from Agricultural Conservation and Natural Resources was rejected. The amendment from Finance was also rejected. If we want to put back on the amendment from Finance, which was the clause, can we do that after consideration of the substitute, the floor substitute?
It has to be a floor amendment.
Okay.
We'll need a floor amendment. It's my understanding that we will need a floor amendment.
Yes, okay.
Thanks a lot, George.
Right fast.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Shall I speak really slowly while George gets the form? Madam President, again, this floor substitute really just, it's a simple 4-line summary of exactly that the public animal shelter shall annually file with the state veterinarian a copy of its intake policy, the number of animals upon which euthanasia procedure was performed, and of such number, the number of animals surrendered with the intent to euthanize and presented by the public animal shelter to a licensed veterinarian prior to euthanasia. This is a very good thing for us to have to determine what our save rates are and how we can improve our save rates for cats and dogs in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And for those reasons, and my favorite color is green. I'm a Cancer. When I was a child, I couldn't stand meatloaf. And George, can you ride a little faster there, buddy? Come on. I love broccoli. I do. I love broccoli. I love broccoli. You know, usually, Madam President, I love standing up here and just talking for like minutes and minutes, but for one reason now, I have nothing to say, and it's really kind of disappointing to myself. None of the jokes I can tell on the floor.
Bigfoot.
Madam President, would the gentleman yield for a question?
Sure, I'll yield.
The gentleman has stated that he hates broccoli. Does he realize, or he likes broccoli?
Love.
Does he realize that George H.W. Bush hated broccoli, and that you are now in disconnect with our former president?
Madam President, I would answer the gentleman by saying, quite frankly, all viewpoints with our conservative Republican Party can live under one giant tent with broccoli and without broccoli.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. Madam President, if I may say, if this bill could help fix the roofs in all of the Commonwealth of Virginia with the money from Skill Games, I'd do it. That didn't go over well either again.
Madam President.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Could the senator from Franklin talk to the body about his new law office and his favorite client?
Will the senator yield?
I'll yield. And I'll gladly talk about my favorite client who I've known for 30 years, and I just put a law office over here so I could be closer to him. Some people call that stalking. I call that admiration and convenience. So,
thank you, Senator Stanley. Madam Clerk, could you please read the amendment?
We haven't agreed to the
Floor sub.
price.
Need to adopt the floor sub.
Oh, Madam President, I now move again that we adopt the floor substitute.
The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. Madam Clerk.
Floor amendment, it's up there with ruse, that the provisions of this act shall not become effective unless an appropriation effectuating the purposes of this act is included in a General Appropriation Act passed in 2020 by the General Assembly that becomes law.
Madam President, I now move the floor amendment. Speaking to that motion briefly.
The question is, I'm sorry, the senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I really don't know why we have to have the clause on this thing, because it's making the public reporting aids, which are the animal shelters, which they have to bring data points to VDACs every year, which how many animals they take in, what's the euthanasia rate, what's the adoption rate, that we're asking for 2 more data points, which they keep normally in their records. I have suffered, as we all have suffered, from the clause for too long. And I say we stand up to the clause. And for those reasons, I don't think I need the clause on here. But I see that the Chairman of Finance is about to stand up, so I've now moved that the floor amendment be agreed to. And I really didn't mean that. I didn't mean it at all.
The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The floor amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 306.
Madam President.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Point of inquiry, Madam President.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct in counting that there are 60 pages left on today's calendar? 60 pages, and we have done 27 pages since 10:30 this morning.
The senator from James City County is correct.
Senate Bill 306, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I am not the cause of what page we're on right now, but really quickly I move that the committee substitute be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the amendments from the Committee on Finance also be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be adopted? All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted.
Senate Bill 310, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with amendment.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. On Senate Bill 310, I now move that the committee substitute from the Committee on Agriculture be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the amendments from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments from Finance and Appropriations be agreed to? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 320, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment, and there is a floor substitute.
The senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Madam President, I apologize for the legislative gymnastics, but we do have to go through a little of them here to get this bill in proper posture and just make some technical corrections to the language. So what I would ask the body to do is reject the Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources substitute. I would move its adoption, but recommend its rejection.
The motion is to move the adoption, but will recommend that the committee substitute be rejected. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Committee substitute is rejected. Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
And now, Madam President, I would also move, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I would move the amendment of the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the motion is that the committee amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriation be rejected. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and the committee amendment is rejected. Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
And now, Madam Chair, I would move that we waive reading of the floor substitute.
The question is, shall the floor substitute shall we waive the reading of the floor substitute? All in favor of that motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And now, Madam Chair, I would move adoption of the floor substitute and speaking to that motion.
The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of that motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Lewis from Accomack.
Madam Chair, just for the body's information, the substitute we just adopted contained technical amendments and some language amendments to the original bill, which passed, as the body can see, uncontested from both at the Agriculture Committee and the Finance Committee. There are 3 versions of this fund in 3 different pieces of legislation, and so what we're trying to do is to get the language to match up exactly. There's some in the senior senator from Richmond's Virginia Clean Economy legislation. There's some in a bill we'll be taking up later, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That's my bill. And then we had a standalone bill reconstituting this fund, all of which, the language is technical. And then there was a recommendation by the Attorney General's office. The language in the original bill contained a loan forgiveness for economically disadvantaged communities. And this bill clarifies that while the loan can be forgiven, the locality still has an obligation on the principal of the loan. So that's what the substitute does. And with that, I move that the bill be engrossed and passed on to its 3rd reading.
The question is on the floor substitute.
I thought we adopted it. I'm sorry.
The question is, shall the floor... Oh, it's in the block. Okay.
Are we okay?
Madam Clerk.
Senate Bill 407, reported from the Committee on Rules with a substitute.
The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the substitute from the Committee on Rules.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. Junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
No, that's it.
Senate Bill 410, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the substitute from the Committee on Education and Health.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 462, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with an amendment, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senator from Pennsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm actually from Spotsylvania, but I appreciate that. I'd ask that we which amendment first? Oh, move the amendment on health and education. Move the committee amendment. Thank you.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted.
Madam President, I would now move the committee amendment from Finance and Appropriations.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from Finance be adopted? All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted.
Senate Bill 504, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Searle.
Got it that time. I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 534, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with amendments and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Madam President, I move that the committee amendments from Finance be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments from Finance be agreed to? All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted.
Senate Bill 557, reported from the Committee on Transportation with an amendment and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the committee amendment from the Committee on Transportation please be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee amendments from the Committee on Transportation be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments from the Committee on Transportation is adopted. Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the committee amendment from Finance.
There's not one.
No, I'm sorry. That's it.
Madam Clerk.
Senate Bill 567, reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor. Senate Bill 568, reported for the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we adopt the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of that motion say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 586, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 587, reported from the Committee on Rules with a substitute.
The senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 608, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations, and there are two floor amendments.
The senator from James City, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. The senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Searle.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move that we waive reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading is waived.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move the floor amendments in a block and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, all this does is this is Senator Norman's bill that broadens the types of offenses that can be expunged. And what this floor amendment does is it adds a civil infraction to the type of charge that can be expunged. You might ask why, and that's because we're about to, I think, later this session, make marijuana possession a civil infraction. And unless we make this amendment, you could be charged with a marijuana civil violation, be found not guilty, but not be able to expunge it. And this just makes it clear that you can expunge a dismissed or not guilty civil infraction.
The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by the sign of aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 619, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Madam President, I move the amendment or the substitute from the Committee on Education and Health.
The question is, shall the committee substitute from the Committee on Education and Health be agreed to? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 636, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 640, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with amendment.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Serval.
Madam President, I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall a committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Madam President, I also move, unhappily, the Finance Committee amendment.
The question is, shall the committee substitute from the Committee on Finance and Appropriation be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The committee amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriation is agreed to.
Senate Bill 704, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with a substitute.
The senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I move to adopt the substitute from Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the motion is, will the substitute from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources be approved? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The committee substitute is rejected.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with that, I move that we adopt the substitute from Finance and Appropriations.
The question is, shall the committee substitute from Committee on Finance and Appropriation be adopted? All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 705, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations. Senate Bill 718, reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 720, reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the committee substitute be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 722, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 723, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Madam President, I move that the substitute for Senate Bill 723 be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the amendment from the Finance Committee be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be adopted? All in favor of that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 728, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
With trepidation, I move that the amendment from the Finance Committee be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be adopted? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 753, reported for the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move the committee amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from Finance and Appropriation be agreed to? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment from Finance and Appropriation is agreed to.
Senate Bill 758, reported for the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marston.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 762, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with a substitute.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that this committee substitute be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 763, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with a substitute.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Thank you again, Madam President. I move that this substitute also be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 783, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Madam Chairman, I move adoption of the substitute from the Committee on Agriculture.
The question is, shall the substitute be adopted from the Committee on Agriculture and Conservation, Natural Resources? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 791, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and there is a floor amendment.
The senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Parliamentary inquiry, Madam Chair. I believe the floor amendment is drawn to the substitute. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Then I would move adoption of the substitute from Agriculture and Natural Resources, Madam Chair.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources be adopted? All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And now, Madam Chair, I'd waive reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Madam Chair, the floor amendment simply strips off the emergency clause. And so I would move adoption of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor?
Madam President, may I ask a gentleman a question?
The senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the gentleman yield? I would ask, gentlemen, why do we want to take off the emergency clause? Don't we need to enact the cap before it goes, or are you going to let them do it?
And I know in this body, if I say trust me, that's but I will tell the gentleman that we have run into some rough sailing in other rooms in this Capitol building with the emergency clause. And so we're...
I understand. Thank you. Thank the gentleman, Madam President.
The senator from Chesapeake. That was a question? Okay. Shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 818, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute, and there is a floor amendment.
The senator from Washington,
Madam
junior senator from Richmond, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the substitute from the Committee on the Judiciary be adopted.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on the Judiciary be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Madam President, point of parliamentary inquiry.
Oh, the senator from Roanoke County, Senator Edwards. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
The senator from Roanoke City. Mr. President, I move the floor amendment, and the floor amendment just simply deletes the phrase previously incarcerated.
Senator Edwards, you need to waive the reading of the floor amendment.
Waive the reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the question of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived.
Madam President, speaking to the floor amendment.
The senator.
I move the floor amendment, and the only thing the floor amendment does is remove the language previously incarcerated, because people other than those previously incarcerated can benefit from the Behavioral Health Docket Act. So with that explanation, I move that the floor amendment be adopted.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I would tell the body that I've spoken to the senator from Roanoke about this floor amendment. I consider it a friendly amendment. I'd ask that the body support the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 831, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Madam Chair, I move adoption of the substitute from the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on Commerce and Labor be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 846, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor. Senate Bill 850, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 902, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the substitute from the Committee on Education and Health.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on Education and Health be adopted? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be adopted.
The question is, shall the amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriation be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted.
Senate Bill 918, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the committee substitute from the Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources Committee be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senator from Western Fairfax, you have another one.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from Finance be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 930, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the substitute from the Committee on Judiciary be adopted.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on the Judiciary be adopted? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 931, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The junior senator from
Senate Bill 954, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with amendments and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
Madam President, I move that the Committee on Agriculture amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources be agreed to? All in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, no.
Madam President, I move that the Committee on Finance amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 957, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 968, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee amendments.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1014, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations. Senate Bill 1031, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with an amendment.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1040, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations. Senate Bill 1075, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the substitute from the Committee on Agriculture be adopted.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on Agriculture be adopted? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
I move that the amendment from the Finance Committee be adopted.
The question is, shall the committee amendment from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute amendment is adopted.
Senate Bill 1080, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed and advanced to the third reading? That is, all bills except for, was there anything taken out? Okay. All bills in the block. The question is, shall the bills in the block be engrossed and advanced to the third reading? All in favor will say aye. I'm flipping pages here. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills in the block are engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Same block.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all Senate bills now on third reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 22 through 50, that's SB 31 through SB 1080, the bills we just did, that the rules be suspended and the third constitutional reading be dispensed with.
The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third reading of the titles of the bills be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are all senators ready to vote? Have all senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
We're going to move now.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I now move that all the Senate bills now on third reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 22 through 50, Senate bills 31 through 1080, be placed on their final passage in a block. Any senator desiring to move a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills now on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 22 through 50, Senate Bill 31 through Senate Bill 1080, be placed upon their final passage in the block with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. Clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 41, Senate Bill 48, Senate Bill 87, Senate Bill 97, Senate Bill 130, Senate Bill 206.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Senate Bill 97 come out of the block, please.
Without objection, Senate Bill 97 be removed from the block.
Senate Bill 250, Senate Bill 280, Senate Bill 304, Senate Bill 306, Senate Bill 310, Senate Bill 320, Senate Bill 407, Senate Bill 410, Senate Bill 462, Senate Bill 504, Senate Bill 534, Senate Bill 557, Senate Bill 567, Senate Bill 568, Senate Bill 586, Senate Bill 587, Senate Bill 608, Senate Bill 619, Senate Bill 636, Senate Bill 640, Senate Bill 704, Senate Bill 705, Senate Bill 718, Senate Bill 720, Senate Bill 722, Senate Bill 723, Senate Bill 728, Senate Bill 753, Senate Bill 758, Senate Bill 762, Senate Bill 763, Senate Bill 783, Senate Bill 791, Senate Bill 818.
Mr. President, could Senate Bill 818 be removed from the block?
Without objection, Senate Bill 818 be removed from the block.
Senate Bill 831, Senate Bill 846, Senate Bill 850, Senate Bill 902, Senate Bill 918, Senate Bill 930, Senate Bill 931, Senate Bill 954, Senate Bill 957, Senate Bill 968.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you. Could Senate Bill 968 come out of the block?
Without objection, the bill be removed from the block.
Senate Bill 1014, Senate Bill 1031, Senate Bill 1040, Senate Bill 1075, Senate Bill 1080.
Question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is all bills except for Senate Bills 97, 818, and 968. All in favor of passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Having voted on the prevailing side in which we just passed the bills in the block, I'd ask that we reconsider that vote.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the bills in the block pass be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to. The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is all bills except for Senate Bill 97, 818, and 968. All in favor of passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Returning to page 24, Senate Bill 97.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 97 pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
This is the bill that applies the anti-discrimination, fair housing prohibitions against decisions by local governments in the application of their land use ordinances and decisions, but also prohibits them from denying a project solely based on the fact that project may have affordable units. This passed this body 36-4 last year, and I ask that we pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 97? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 97 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. Senate Bill 97 passes.
On page 42,
Mr. President.
Senate Bill 818.
One sec. Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
When this bill, I'm rise to make a motion that this bill be referred back to the Committee on Courts of Justice, carried over for the year. When this bill came before before the Judiciary Committee, I apologize. When this bill came before the committee, my main question was its impact on what was going on at the Supreme Court right now. Over the last several years, they've instituted a number of behavioral health dockets around the state, and I didn't want any legislation we passed to have a chilling impact on that because I knew no dollars would attach to what we were doing. And the answer to that question at that time was a little bit confusing, but they didn't seem to have a problem. Since then, I've received some correspondence from the Executive Secretary's office, and they are concerned about this legislation. Since they're already doing this, since they're already instituting behavioral health dockets, and they're doing more and more of it all over the state, I don't think this legislation there's an emergency to get it passed, and I'd ask that we pass it back, take a look at it, and make sure that what we are doing here is in concert with what's going on at the Supreme Court of Virginia.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is Junior Senator for Richmond City? Senator Morrissey rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, with the understanding that if it's referred back to the judiciary, the bill is killed, let me address the senator from Bath's concerns. Senate Bill 818 was proposed because there is no codification at this point of what the Senator from Bath refers to as the rules of the Virginia Supreme Court 1:25. Let's go back a little bit further. 3 years ago, there was a rule passed by the rules of the Supreme Court 1:25 that created specialty dockets. There is a need in the Commonwealth of Virginia for certain specialty dockets. For example, those individuals that are in the throes of a mental health crisis, that they can go onto a mental health docket instead of the regular docket. So far, we have actually done that in 11 jurisdictions throughout the Commonwealth. Augusta County, Charlottesville, Chesapeake, Fairfax, Loudoun, Newport News, Norfolk, Richmond, and 3 different jurisdictions in Richmond, General District Circuit, and J&D Court. What should have been done 3 years ago was this law should have been passed then, 818. Create the law, create the Behavioral Health Docket Act, and then create the rule. It's actually being done in reversed. I took the time and effort to speak with the executive director of the Supreme Court, and he indicated to me in my office that they like the bill, but they think that Rule 1:25 is sufficient. It may be, but there are 3 branches for a reason: the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. We're the legislative branch. There needs to be enactment of the behavioral health docket, and I can assure the senator from Bath County that there will be no interruption in what is being done. But you know what it will do? It will allow other jurisdictions in the state that right now cannot avail themselves of this docket the opportunity to apply to have a mental health docket in their jurisdiction. That's what it does. Nothing is changed. Nothing will be harmed. Nothing will be hurt. And I would remind the body that this bill squeaked by Judiciary 13-0 and then squeaked by Finance 16-0. So while I respect the Supreme Court's decision to where they conclude what we have is enough, I respectfully suggest that we need to codify that. And I'd ask that the motion be defeated.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from King George? Senator Stewart rise.
Speak to the motion, Mr.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I joined to oppose the motion to recommit the bill. Having practiced for 20-some years and prosecuted for a term in the local court systems, I can tell you there's nothing we need more than this. I had to try to figure out what to do with people who were paranoid schizophrenic and other issues, and there was nothing out there for them. And the law is not crafted to try to help these people with what we have to offer them. And I really think it's a desperate need for this, and I don't know why we would put it off, and I don't know why we would send it back. And I stand with the gentleman from the city of Richmond. I hope we'll pass the bill and not recommit it.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the motion? Seeing none, the question is, shall the bill be recommitted to the Committee on Judiciary? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The motion fails. Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Having already, thank you, Mr. President. Having already explained the genesis of SB 818 and for the explanation previously given, I'd ask that SB 818 pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 818? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 818 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. Senate Bill 818 passes.
On page 47, Senate Bill 968.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move that the bill pass.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this bill is to make it easier for VDOT road projects to move forward without having to condemn and pay just compensation to landowners and billboard sign owners when all the parties would be happy to just move the billboard a few feet. This legislation will save taxpayers money and allow road projects to proceed efficiently without going through a costly condemnation process, and I reiterate my motion that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 968? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 968 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. Senate Bill 968 passes.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 7, a bill relating to the minimum wage, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with a substitute. And we have a floor substitute and many amendments.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we reject the substitutes from both with a recommendation that we reject the, you want me to do the one amendment one at a time? Okay, I would move that we reject, I would move that we, with a recommendation we reject the Commerce and Labor substitute, I would move that it be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute from the Committee on Commerce and Labor be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, with respect to the substitute from the Senate, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I would move that it be agreed to.
Is this the substitute on Finance and Appropriations?
From Finance and Appropriations.
Thank the Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
My understanding is that you've got substitutes and amendments. What I would like to do is yield to this senator from Eastern Fairfax, Eastern Fairfax.
What are you talking about? Which one are you talking about?
He's actually a Southern Fairfax.
If it's Sorrel, it's Eastern Fairfax, but Senator yields.
Somewhere in Fairfax.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Sorrel.
Just don't call me late for dinner. Is my substitute next? Okay. I would move to waive reading of the floor substitute.
Question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Serville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the floor substitute and speaking to the motion.
Senator, it's the floor.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this floor substitute is a little bit different than the bills that came out of either Commerce and Labor or Finance. I'm going to sort of walk you through it really quick so you understand what you're voting on. It's got some complicated word stuff in it. So, first of all, word stuff. So, first of all, the bill takes minimum wage to $9.50 an hour effective January 1 of 2021. Then it increases it $1 an hour every year until it gets to $15 an hour. And I'm going to footnote that. Okay? And that's in lines 94 through 109 where it does that. Okay? Now, once the minimum wage hits $11.50 an hour in those increases, the minimum wage increases will be indexed by region. And so if you look at the bill, what it does is it says that the Department of Labor is to come up with minimum wage regions. That is, areas that have a similar median family income and cost of living according to the United States Census. It's there to publish these regions. And then when the minimum wage goes up each year, the Department of Labor is also supposed to publish the minimum wage by region in those regions relative to the highest region, which presumably will be Northern Virginia. So just to give you an example, say when it goes up by $1 one year, the average family income, median family income in Fairfax County is $100,000. Say in one of these regions, the median family income is $40,000. That means in that region, the minimum wage would go up by 40 cents instead of $1. And so that goes through all the way until we get to $15 an hour. After we hit $15 an hour, the minimum wage goes up by CPI in perpetuity. So that's how the minimum wage piece of the bill works. The bill has a couple other things in it. Number one, it ensures that home health care workers are included in minimum wage. That's in lines 15 through 16 and 57 through 63. So it confirms that they're not excluded. They are included in the minimum wage. There's also an exception for farm workers in lines 64 through 65 who come here pursuant to the H2A and H2A visa program. The reason that farm workers are excluded under the H2A program is because right now, and the senator from Accomack County can explain it if I don't get this right. But right now, with farm workers who come under that program, under federal law, they're required to be paid the state minimum wage plus an additional amount, and their living expenses, their housing expenses, and transportation costs covered. Right. So right now, farm workers are paid $12 and some cents an hour, even though state minimum wage is $7.25. And in order to ensure the viability of that program, we have to accept them from this increased wage. And if anybody has questions about that, I'm sure that the Senator from Accomack can better explain it than I can. The bill also, I have some floor amendments that need to be made in a second to make this crystal clear. But the bill also takes the student part-time worker exemption and pushes that to age 22. And it says that they're to be paid 75% of the new minimum wage, and it also has an exemption for 90-day employees who are being trained. That's in lines 86 through 87. And these student workers, by the way, have to be working 20 hours or less. So that's a summary of what this bill does. Again, I have some floor amendments that need to be taken up in a block. There was we missed a couple edits this morning that we just need to make it clear what it does, but that's basically what the sub does. I'm happy to answer any questions.
For what purpose does the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, will the gentleman yield for a question?
Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Does this make any change to the wage tip credit for restaurant employees?
Senator has the floor.
No.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. What purpose, Senator from Bedford? Senator Newman, rise.
Mr. President, I rise for purposes of a question or two and then
to the
statement. Mr. President, would the gentleman yield?
Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I'd ask a couple of questions. One, on line 13 and throughout the bill, when you speak of the commissioner, are we talking about the VEC commissioner being able to make these adjustments on inflation?
Senator has the floor.
Line 13. I'm trying to remember. I think that's right. It's we'd originally talked about the commerce. Yeah, it's the VEC commissioner. Yes, that's right.
Further question?
Further question, Mr. President.
Senator
Yes.
Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I then ask, the net effect of your bill is that everyone in the state of Virginia will go up about 58, 60%, up to 1150. No matter what region you're in, you're going to hit that 60% increase. Is that correct?
Senator's the floor.
Exactly.
Mr. President, I would further ask, it appears in...
I'll yield.
Senator's the floor.
I apologize, Mr. President. It appears that what is basically number 12, or the old number 12, which is persons with mental illness and physical deficiency and intellectual disabilities, has been taken out as an exception. I understand that those that get the federal certificate in 11 are out, but could the gentleman give me the reason why we left out those individuals formerly in 12 that don't have a certificate but very clearly have these criteria?
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the gentleman pointing that out, and I should have mentioned that when I went through the bill. That strike, I believe, was in all the prior bills that came out of committee, I think. Oh, it wasn't? Okay. Well, that strike... I can tell you that strike was in the bill that I was given before I rewrote this. And I know there's a bill coming through from the other side, which I think does the same thing, but I'm not sure if we've acted on a similar bill on our side.
Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Further question.
Senator Yield for further question.
Mr. President, maybe I'd indicate to the gentleman that there may be another amendment in the stack of stuff that gets to that before we get down through it. Mr. President, I thank the gentleman speaking to the
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I appreciate the Senator from Eastern Fairfax and Senator from Accomack and some others that have been working on this. Mr. President, I would tell you, however, that for some of us in the far southwest or what we call Central Virginia, this is still a killer amendment. This basically takes us up to 1150 and then gives the commissioner, under some rules that are outlined in the substitute, an ability to raise that all the way up to 15. And then when you get 15, do you hit the CPI? And, Mr. President, I do appreciate the work that's been done. However, I think that is going to be dangerous and injurious to jobs to our region. Mr. President, in your stack of stuff, if we do not pass this floor substitute, there's amendments to the committee. There are amendments to the committee substitute that would, I believe, raise the minimum wage throughout Virginia to $9 per hour, raise the minimum wage in Planning District 8 all the way up to $15 an hour, and allow localities throughout the Commonwealth the opportunity to opt in to the Planning District 8. Mr. President, I think that's responsible. I think that's reasonable. And I'll tell you, as I've mentioned in the committee, I agree that I haven't been one that has been very much voting in favor of increasing it above the current rate. But I will tell you this, that if we go to the $9, which I believe our area can reasonably absorb, I will vote for it. I may be the only one here that will vote for it, but I will vote for that because I think it does save our region from what I think is going to be some pretty devastating economic impact. Mr. President, also, if you look at the floor substitute, which, again, I appreciate the gentleman, and you get past to line 123, it's blank from all the studies that we've agreed to. We've all been talking about the fact that we need to have studies. There have been some discussions back and forth on whether that's VEC or whether that ends up being VEDP, but we need to look at this and make sure that now that we're on the train, at least the first year in, that we understand that if this is going to be injurious To the people in Grundy and Rustburg and places that many of you may never have heard of that are small towns that are going to be devastated by this, that we get the study back from even VEC or VEDP, either one, and we say, listen, it's time to make an adjustment. Mr. President, I was also hoping that there would at least be some type of kill switch, but there's not a kill switch. There is an indication in the bill, unless I'm reading the bill wrong, that says that when you get to the inflation calculation, if the inflation calculation is less than 0, you have to ignore it. In other words, if it is being injurious, and we know it's being injurious, we have to ignore it. If you end up with a disinflation situation, you have to ignore that. Mr. President, I'm in a unique position in that I'm grateful that we got somewhat better, but it is, in my opinion, something that's going to hurt greatly. Mr. President, if for some reason this doesn't get on, I would hope that we would maybe either today or maybe before the process ends at the end of this session, we will get back to something that looks a lot more like what is in your stack of stuff. The amendments that we have here that would take us up substantially, not up 60%, but take us up substantially, and also would allow Northern Virginia to go where they would like to go to 15. So, Mr. President, to the senator from Eastern Fairfax, I thank you for your work. I thank the senator from Accomack and others, the senator from Williamsburg and others who have, senator from, I guess it's Western or Loudoun County, who have been concerned about these items. However, I just think we landed at the wrong place and one that is likely to be injurious. So I thank the body. I hope that we get an opportunity to look at what is Newman substitute number 1. And if not, there are some other amendments that I think would help the floor amendment that is before us today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Henrico? Senator Dunham, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering if the sponsor of the amendment would yield for a question.
Will Senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm just curious on lines 57 through 63 in the amendment. Does the budget amendment from the initial bill reflect the fiscal impact to the state health plan and DMAS for the addition of home health workers in the new amendment?
Senator, the floor.
First of all, I haven't looked at the budget amendment, but obviously I think whatever amendment was put in could be could address whatever we end up passing. Number one. Number two, I'm told by a voice in my ear over here that it's in the governor's budget. Number three, I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe that this proposal is less aggressive than what was proposed previously, so it should be lesser than anything anybody's budgeted so far. That's my assumption, but I haven't gone and squared the numbers up yet.
Further question?
Mr. President, just to speak to the amendment.
Senator, the floor.
I think the policy in general evokes a lot of uncertainty and anxiety, and I think that this amendment has a lot of unknowns on fiscal impact, and I think that because of that, I would encourage us to move on to other options that we have and not pass this amendment.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from? There's some folks still buzzed in. I don't know if anyone want to ask you questions.
Save me for the end.
No, I wasn't going to you. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the gentleman would be so kind to yield for a question.
Will Senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, having followed this bill through Commerce and Labor and the other legislative meanderings it has taken, there seems to have been an increase in the number of exemptions that have been eliminated. Would the gentleman please share with me what the intent was and the rationale behind deleting lines 44 and 45, which would be exemption number 16?
Sure.
Senator's the floor.
Well, it's actually, that's kind of misleading. So it actually doesn't eliminate it. What it does is it disappears in lines 44 through 46, and then it shows back up again in lines 81 through 87. And it goes back in there. The student worker exception goes back in there, but it says they're to be paid 75% of the new minimum wage. And the floor amendments that you have that we haven't voted on yet take it from 18 to 22.
Further question?
And the reason we did that, Mr. Chairman, I would say to Mr. President, the reason we did that was so that they would get a little bit of an increase, but still stay largely exempt from the new wage.
Mr. President, if you would yield for another question.
Senator Yield. Senator Yield, to the floor.
Mr. President, I would say, just so I understand your explanation, it went from being a total exemption to 75, it will be paid 75%, is that correct?
You got it.
Okay. And Mr. President, I would go back to my original question. What was the rationale for eliminating it or adjusting it in the first place?
Senator's the floor.
Because I think this side of the aisle thought that the student workers ought to be able to get a little bit of an increase, but not nearly as much as everybody else.
Further question?
Mr. President, if you would yield for another question.
Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I see that it pertains to a work-study program or its equivalent. Would that include those who are teaching assistants while they're either an undergraduate or in a graduate program at one of our public colleges and universities?
Senator has the floor.
I would say to the senator that the intent was to keep it exactly the same in terms of who was eligible.
Okay. I thank the gentleman.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Loudoun, Senator Bell rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
First, I want to thank the gentleman for Fairfax for his hard work on this amendment. I had some concerns that have been shared by others, and part of it was to make sure we didn't cause hardship and we took reasonable, measured approaches. And I wanted to point out a couple of things. We did the math on the what would be the right number. We looked at every state and their minimum wage, and the average right now is $9.06. So $9.50, frankly, is a pretty reasonable place to start this move at. And one thing I want to point out is there's places like Arkansas that are considered low-cost areas, and they're at $10. So we tried to go to a pretty reasonable place. And then we looked at the other part of it is if we did the inflation adjusted, where would that be at? That's $11.76. So the two increases after the first year are pretty measured increases to get us close to that. And frankly, we did another pretty conservative approach there. It only goes to $11.50, not the full $11.76. So I would point out that we tried to do a very reasonable approach, and we tried to make sure we took steps that would give businesses time to be predictable and make exceptions. I appreciate the hard work that went into this. Mr. President, I ask everyone to strongly consider supporting this measure.
Senator, for what purpose does the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
Mr. President, I would ask that you accept the substitute from Senator Servell. I think it, quite frankly, reflects a pretty good compromise. If you remember, in the original bill, it went starting this coming July 1st, it started at $10 an hour, and every July 1st, it went up consecutively to until it reached $15 an hour in 2025. This starts, as you can see, this starts at $9.50, and not July 1st of this year, but January 1st of next year. And it's 18 months at that before it goes to the next, which is $10.50 an hour. And then it gets to, I think, $11.50 a year later, and then the work, the meat of the bill kicks in at that point. And I think that this is a very good compromise. And it allows, it's the best that you can do on regionalization. I mean, everybody's been asking for regionalization. You're getting it in this bill, essentially. So, in Fairfax County, If it's 121,000 is the median family income, a little more than Loudoun, but if your district is at, or your area is at 60,000, you will go up 50 cents more that next year instead of the full $1. A business community asked for exemptions for students. We put it in there. Farm workers, there's a whole lot that we've done that are in this compromise, and I would hope that you all would accept this. Let me just tell you, 27 states since 2014 have raised their minimum wage. 27 states since 2014. For years and years and years, the minimum wage just didn't get raised. For a long time, until about a decade ago, 12 years ago, it was $5.15 an hour. And then we made it, then the federal minimum wage went to $7.25. We've never gone higher than the federal minimum wage. I'm in the business community just like a lot of people in here are. And, my cashiers have always earned a lot more than the minimum wage. And I got to tell you something, it's a lot cheaper to do it that way than it is to keep putting that ad for employees in the Washington Post. Mr. Snyder, I don't mean any ill will. But I mean, no, really, I love the Washington Post. but it's easier to do that, plus the training aspect of that. We don't have a high turnover as a result of doing that. So this is not going to be the end of Western civilization. Trust me, this passes, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Well, maybe not here in Richmond, but it's going to come up, and we're going to move ahead. We're not going to lose employers. There's not hardly anybody making $7.25 an hour now anyway, realistically. So I would hope that I think it's pretty well thought out, and I would hope that you would accept the substitute offered by Senator Surville.
Senator, for what purpose is Senator from Western Fairfax? Senator Marsden rise. No. Do any other senators wish to be heard on the floor substitute? Seeing none, Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the motion.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you heard from the senior senator from Fairfax County, this bill was it's a compromise of a bunch of different interests with a bunch of different input. We've been hearing the concerns from both sides of the aisle, and we're trying to come up with a compromise here that at least begins to reflect, I think, somewhat close to somewhat more of a consensus of the body. What we're going to see from the other side is look radically different than this. And, as we all know, legislating is a process, and this step is the first. Well, it's not the first step, but it's not the last step in this process. And you're going to see this bill probably 2 or 3 more times before you end up having a final product in front of you. And we think it's important to send a message on a few things, which is why it's drafted this way. The disabled issue, but the disabled workers, which we'll talk about in a second, which I suspect that might be coming back, being restored in the bill in a minute. But the disabled community requested that change. A lot of folks in that community feel like paying disabled workers a lower wage than regular minimum wage is offensive, and some think it's discriminatory. Not everybody agrees with that, but that was the feedback we heard from them. I would also note that we often, when we do these bills that are this big, they're often continue to be tinkered with for multiple sessions as we sort of experience things. The 2013 transportation bill, been tinkering with that ever since we passed HB 2313. We've been tinkering with the Metro funding bill from 2 years ago ever since we passed it every year. I think minimum wage is going to be that similar experience when and if it's passed and signed by the governor over the next ensuing sessions. And so this is just the beginning of a conversation. I'd hope people would see it that way. And we will continue to listen and take feedback and work through this as the legislative process continues. And so I think it's important that we pass this, do these next amendments, get this over the other side, and keep moving so we can get through the remaining whatever 40 pages we have left today.
The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that we waive reading of floor amendments 1 through 5 of mine.
Okay. And Senator, just before we do that, just as a point of order, Senator Newman, the 21 amendments that were drawn to the finance sub are now out of order just because that
withdraw them.
Okay. Without objection, those are withdrawn. Question is, shall the reading of floor amendments 1 through 5 from Senator Servell be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendments is waived. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the 5 floor amendments in a block and speaking to that motion.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So these 5 amendments, what they do is just, first of all, they raise the student worker, I don't know whether they call it an exemption or a special rule, from 18 to 22. And then secondly, it gets it out of the, I'm sorry, this is the under 18-year-old exemption, and exemption number 14. This takes the under 18 exemption up to the age 22 and does the same thing where they get paid 75% of whatever the new minimum wage is. That's what this does. It makes that clear. Right? We did it in one part of the bill, but we didn't get rid of the exemption. So to clean it up, we have to do this.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor amendments? Seeing none, the question is, shall floor amendments 1 through 5 be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. 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 Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are adopted. Now we'll go to Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman, who also has amendments.
Mr. President, in your stack, there is amendments that are labeled Newman number 3. Mr. President, I would waive the reading of the floor amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendments be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendments is waived. Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, if you will turn your attention to page 2 of the floor substitute that we have now agreed to, item number 12 on line 35 and 36, this is the intellectual disability waiver that has been in the code for a good while. Mr. President, there has been added, if you're wondering, on number 1133, a portion of these individuals, but they have to have a particular federal certificate. And the rest of those individuals are people that are also dear to most of our hearts, that are intellectually disabled, but they are working either at a sheltered workshop, or they may be working at your local Kroger or somewhere bagging your groceries. And, Mr. President, I don't want to linger too long here, but I will tell you that since I was 24 years old and on the board of our sheltered workshop, I developed a very soft place in my heart for these people because they came to work every day. They told everyone they came to work every day. They worked hard. They were there away from their families. Their families had an opportunity to spend time doing other things, a break, and it was a situation they were very happy with. There are some people, and I should be very clear with you, that would like to say only those that get the federal certificate should be included. But let me tell you about the other group, and that is I have a very close friend of mine whose son, Stephen, works at a local Sam's. He's a beautiful young man. He is named after me. The reason it's named with a PH is he was named after me. But he is there every day. He loves his job, and I'm grateful when I see him every day. And Sam's has given him a tremendous job, but he would have the opportunity to fall under the provisions of this floor amendment. Mr. President, I hope there's not any opposition. If there is, be glad to answer any questions, but I would hope that we would adopt floor amendment number 3.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
I would ask that we accept Senator Newman's amendment.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the floor amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are adopted. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
I assume there's no more amendments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I would move that Senate Bill 7 with a floor substitute as amended be engrossed and advanced to the third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 529, a bill relating to admissibility of statements of a deceased or incompetent party, hearsay exception, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Yeah, Mr. President, this is a bill to bury the dead man's rule. Mr. President,
Senator, the floor.
Issues have come up, and I'm asking that the bill be recommitted to the Judiciary Committee to be worked on throughout the year.
Senator, you want to recommit to Judiciary and continue?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me report the substitute. I guess I need to report to
you can. You don't have to.
All right. Okay.
You don't have to.
Just recommit to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Just recommit. Okay. Question is, shall Senate Bill 529 be recommitted to the Committee on Judiciary? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is recommitted to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Senate Bill 2, a bill relating to marijuana, decriminalization of simple marijuana possession penalty, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with the substitute, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations, and we have 2 floor amendments.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the first floor amendment.
We first have the committee substitute.
Okay, move that we adopt the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Okay, we'll go to the amendments. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we waive reading of the floor amendment.
Question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the floor amendment and speaking to that motion.
Senator, the floor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So this amendment arises out of a discussion we had in Crim Sub, and I think we meant to put it on in full judiciary, but I wasn't there. But basically what the amendment does is it says that anyone who is stopped, basically what it says is that law enforcement cannot search a person or their vehicle solely on the basis of the odor of marijuana. We talked about this in committee, but one of the biggest complaints we heard about in Crim Sub when it comes to marijuana possessions is that a lot of people, especially in the minority community, feel like odor of marijuana is used as an excuse to get into people's pockets and their cars on a regular basis, even when that odor doesn't exist. And now that we are decriminalizing marijuana possession and making it a civil infraction, many of us felt that the existence or that smell should not be used as a basis to get into somebody's pocket or to arrest them unless there's an alternate basis to place them under arrest for a different criminal infraction. And that's basically what this language does. We think it's an equitable thing to do given what we're doing with marijuana possession, and I would hope it would pass.
Mr. President, the gentleman yield for a question.
Well, Senator Yield. Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the gentleman, based on this language, if I understand the law correctly, so a small amount would be a civil citation. You are decriminalizing that aspect of it. But aren't there still amounts under the law that are a criminal infraction? And in fact, possession with the intent to distribute and lots of other things. So how does this affect that? I'm confused. I'm really confused. How do you say to law enforcement you can't search or seize based upon the odor of marijuana when there are still criminal violations out there beyond the amount that you've made a civil infraction? Because we're not legalizing it, we're just decriminalizing one action.
Senator, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distribution is still illegal. okay, and possession with intent to distribute is still illegal. And if you have reason to believe somebody's dealing, then you have a basis to then conduct a search of their person or their vehicle. But if all you got is somebody who's speeding or somebody who's standing around the street and you smell marijuana, you can't. The purpose of this is you can't go and search their person or their car unless you have a reason to believe they're breaking another law besides just possession.
Mr. President, the gentleman yield for another question.
I'll yield.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
I'd ask the senator, would not, in fact, the smell of marijuana be indicative of the possibility of more than the decriminalized amount in that person's possession?
Mr. President, I would say absolutely positively no. Just because you're using marijuana doesn't mean you're probably dealing it. In order to show somebody's dealing with it, you'd have to see other indicia that they're dealing, like seeing, them handing somebody something or have information that they're a dealer or something like that. But simply because somebody's sitting in a car and they smell like marijuana, under this provision, at least I don't believe that should allow the government to go into your pocket or your vehicle.
Further question?
Mr. President, speak to this amendment.
Senator, the floor.
This is concerning to me, and I actually brought up, or I was part of the discussion in criminal sub about the fact that when you decriminalize one aspect of a law that has a lot of other criminal sections, you're setting people up for what I think a false comfort level. And I think if you adopt this amendment, you're doing the same thing again, because people think that they are safe when in fact they're not. It's ludicrous to believe that if an officer stops somebody and they have a smell of marijuana about their person, the officer wouldn't have a reasonable suspicion that they possess more than the decriminalized amount. And they could get that search all day long. And I just don't like to set people up for false premises. And DUI is a great example. We say in Virginia, everybody thinks you can drink up to 0.08, which is a misnomer. You can get convicted of a DUI at a 0.04 if you fail your field sobriety test. You can be innocent at a 0.12 if you pass all of your tests. And so when we put something like this into the code, it's of no value. And it gives people a false sense of security. If you want to do this the right way, legalize it. Legalize it so there won't be any other criminal aspects associated with it, because no matter what you try to do, an officer can get a search warrant and do exactly the things that you're trying to prohibit in here, because there are other offenses that are still criminal offenses in Virginia.
For what purpose is Senator from Henrico, Senator Dunham, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak to the amendment.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As an early co-patron on this bill, I do believe in the concept that we're working towards to decriminalize amounts of marijuana that are small. I think it's important for criminal justice reform. However, we cannot avoid the issues of impairment and other things that can come up with the consumption of marijuana. This amendment would say a police officer cannot even stop somebody. We're going to be evolving impairment tests as this changes over time. We cannot completely tie the hands of law enforcement to do the right things to protect the public. I think we're making a great move to decriminalize in Virginia. I do not support this amendment. I think it's a mistake, and I hope that the body will vote against this amendment so that we can move forward with prudence as we make changes in the code, but not take away the ability of law enforcement to prudently intervene if there's impairment. And in order to do that, they need to be able to stop somebody and assess that. So I hope you will vote against this amendment.
For what purpose is Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak briefly to the amendment.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I want the body to understand how these stops go down, what actually occurs. Mr. President, as I'm reading this amendment, it's really broken out in two parts. The first one says that there has to be another reason to cause a stop or arrest. So, Mr. President, the vast majority of these cases occur because of a speeding, a legal turn, a license plate light being not illuminated from 25 feet, dangly object hanging from your rearview mirror, nothing to do with any other illegal substance. So as I read this amendment, you can still be stopped for all of those things. Mr. President, then the second part of the amendment says that a law enforcement officer cannot search solely on the basis of the odor. But Mr. President, it does not say that they can't search for marijuana. So a law enforcement officer comes up, says, I smell the odor of marijuana, and the guy or girl or anybody in the vehicle says, but I haven't smoked in a little while, or it's in the back car, or I finished before I was driving. Any of those things then create some probable cause to search. Mr. President, the one thing I think will likely be litigated pretty substantially is if somebody is under the influence or suspected under the influence, does this language give them a defense to a blood test, which right now would be about the only way that the government could prove a search. Remind the body that if you're under the influence suspected for DUI, drugs or alcohol, prescription or illegal drugs, the government can then go for a search warrant and search your person. So the only question I think the way this language would be, does that give a driver a defense to that search warrant and would cause me some heartbreak? Mr. President, I understand what the gentleman's trying to do, regardless of the policy issue, you agree with it or not. The first part does not prevent law enforcement from stopping you. The second part creates some ambiguity for some instances where you might want law enforcement to be able to execute a search through a blood test if a person is under the influence of marijuana or some other drug while they're driving.
For what purpose is the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Mr. President, I rise in support of the amendment.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, let me preface my remarks with this. The gentleman from King George, the gentleman from Hanover are correct in the points that they made to this body. But let me explain to the body how we got here at this point. There was a great appetite among the folks on subcommittee and committee that the following was causing a problem, and that is this. Police would regularly, when they got to court, say, I smelled an odor of marijuana. As a result of that, and because marijuana is illegal, they were authorized to search the car. And the defendant may be in court for possession of cocaine or possession of a gun or possession of another Schedule 1 or 2 drug. And the question is, how did he get there? He got there, Mr. President, because he searched the car because of the odor of marijuana. Query, how did that cocaine and heroin and a gun don't have a distinctive odor? Here is the problem. Apparently 10 years ago or so, because almost every law enforcement officer is now doing it, took some course at some academy that said if you stop a car for whatever reason, speeding, a light out like Senator McDougal said, once you get there, if you testify I smelled an odor of alcohol, odor of marijuana, you can search the entire car, every little item. Here's the problem. When that occurs on the road, out of 20 times, 19 times, nothing is found, and the people go right on down the road. But the one person that finds drugs or some other items in the car, they're in court, and the judge hears, I smelled an odor of marijuana. Sure enough, there's some contraband, maybe marijuana there. When we were in committee and subcommittee, there was a general consensus that wasn't fair, that wasn't right, and we wanted to correct it. By decriminalizing marijuana, though, we haven't addressed the problem because the police can still search that car, even though now it's a civil penalty, if they smell an odor of marijuana because it's still unlawful. So that's why Senator Serville came up with this amendment. And what he's saying is this. first of all, with regard to Senator Donovan, yes, you can still stop the car for whatever reason, speeding or whatnot. But once you get there, Senator Servill's amendment is saying there's got to be something else. You've got to have some other indicia of criminal activity, and that sole basis of smelling an odor of marijuana isn't going to justify issuing a citation for that. Senator McDougal's right. This is going to open up a box. And I think the only way we're ultimately going to get there is by legalizing marijuana for personal use. But notwithstanding that there's going to be some problems, there's going to be a plethora of motions to suppress because of the search. I don't see how we can do anything other than support Senator Servill's motion because of the mischief that is going on right now. So for those reasons, Mr. President, I'd ask the body to support Senator Servill's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from James City County? Senator Norman, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the proposed amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I would say that a major portion of my professional life is in criminal defense work, and I only offer that because this amendment, I think, has the potential to inure to the benefit of clients that I would represent. Having said that, this amendment caused me enormous discomfort. We are talking about the decriminalization of marijuana, which Senator Eben and I have been working on for many years, long before the Attorney General decided to get on this issue. And we have finally gotten on the cusp of decriminalizing it. And to be referencing moving towards a legalization, there's a very simple reason that we are not addressing the legalization of marijuana like some other states have done. And the practicality of that is because it would not pass this General Assembly. And sometimes in the legislative process, we have to do things incrementally. And we do it incrementally, not necessarily for an insidious reason, but we do it incrementally to see how the enactment of that legislation plays out. I would say to you, where I start checking my professional credentials at the door, as I try to do always, we don't want people smoking marijuana in the car, number one. Number two, technology is evolving so that that law enforcement will be able to detect the presence of marijuana in someone's system to determine whether or not they're operating a motor vehicle under the influence, absent a blood test. I would also say we have a term in the practice of law called pretext stops. And what that means is that law enforcement officers sometimes are looking for a reason to effect a stop of someone, whether they're a motorist or a pedestrian, or in fact to explore in more detail a motor vehicle. But we call that a pretext. I would say to you that you come in and you smell marijuana, but that's not going to be adequate for you to conduct a search, and a search isn't necessarily physically reaching into a vehicle. It can be what is in your visual line of sight, and there sits a bowl of marijuana on the console. What do we do with that? I remember a situation very recently, Mr. President, that I was involved in, which started with the odor of marijuana on a traffic stop. And under the current law, the officers conducted a search of the vehicle, and they found about $50,000 worth of fentanyl in the vehicle. And anybody that knows anything about fentanyl, it takes less than the size of a pinhead will kill you. But it is a very popular and widespread drug that's going across this nation. So I have very mixed emotions about this bill. I don't like pretext stops. I understand the problem with just the odor, but I think we've got to be very, very careful with what we do here. And I suggest to you that law enforcement is not going to embrace this with any affection, and it is probably going to result in some creativity in the way they approach these stops.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor amendment? Seeing none, the senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Saraville.
Mr. President, speaking to the amendment really quick.
Senators, the floor.
You know, a couple things. First of all, everybody I'm sure is aware of the inequities that currently exist in how marijuana is prosecuted, not only in this country, but especially in this Commonwealth. You know, I have a 2015 article here from the Washington Post. It said marijuana arrests on the rise, blacks arrested 3 times more than whites. In some counties, it's 10 times more. And you know what the reason always is? I smelled something. Every single time I smelled something. And I hear it all the time as a lawyer. I hear it all the time from other lawyers. Because odor is not something you can objectively challenge in court. I mean, it's almost impossible to challenge a police officer who says, I smelled something. And they've all been trained to just say, I smelled something, because that gets them into people's pockets and cars whenever they feel like it. We're now moving away from this being a crime. We need to move away from them being able to use this as an excuse, unchallengeable excuse in court to get into people's business. In Maryland, there was a Court of Appeals decision last year that said that it's objectively unreasonable to stop a car because you claimed you'd smelled marijuana outside the car while following it. Because there are some police officers who claim the ability to smell marijuana emanating from a car as they're driving along behind it. And I've had 3 cases now where police officers have told me the reason they stopped the car is because they could smell it coming out of the car while they were sitting on the side of the road and a car went by, or they're following along behind it. This stuff happens all the time. And as we move to make this not criminal, it shouldn't be the basis to get into somebody's car or their pockets. And they shouldn't be able to charge somebody with this unless they have another reason to stop them. That's the whole point of it. You shouldn't be able to get into a marijuana civil infraction unless there's a different offense they can charge you with. That's the point. We had a very healthy discussion in Crim Sub, and I thought we had a lot of support for it. We just didn't have the language ready, and now we have the language ready, and I think we ought to adopt it.
For what purpose, Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator from Eastern Fairfax rise for a question?
Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
President, I would ask the senator, the way I read the bill, no law enforcement officers defined in 9.1-101 may lawfully search or seize any person, place, or thing solely on the basis of odor of marijuana. Mr. President, my question to him would be, on a consensual encounter, and you smell marijuana in an individual, and you have a consensual encounter, which this bill or the amendment at least doesn't mention that, and you ask consent to search that person and they grant it, can it still be used as admissible?
Senator's the floor.
I would say that the senator that this doesn't specifically address that, but consent has always been deemed to be a waiver of any of your constitutional rights. It's one of the 7 exceptions to the search warrant requirement.
Mr. President, I would just say, just because it doesn't say it in here, would that exclude it totally?
Senator's the floor.
I would say to the senator that that's probably going to be up to a judge at some point in terms of how to interpret this, but I know there's nowhere in the code right now that talks about consent. It's something that the courts have assumed is just out there in general always, with the exception of Miranda. You get a little fuzziness over the Fifth Amendment, but there's nowhere in the code that talks about consent or lack of consent in the code. So I would think that the default rule would apply to this, whereas you could waive this by consent.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden, rise?
Speak very quickly to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
As I hear this, it seems to be that it would invalidate the use of any kind of a trained drug detecting dog, because that smell, if you're using a dog to do this, then the dog would be invalidated, or would his sense of smell would be invalidated by this amendment. And I think this needs to be looked at for another year before we get into this. So I would urge you to vote against the amendment.
For what purpose does Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Just very briefly to speak the amendment.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I'm supporting the decriminalizing of marijuana this year. It's past time. It's time we do it. But I got to tell you, this amendment gives me pause to wonder if I'm doing the right thing. The bill as it is now, I think, is a good bill. But I think putting this particular language in that I think is a challenge to law enforcement is not the right thing to do in this bill. I think that Senator Marsden is correct. We probably need to pass by this amendment until we can hear some more evidence and testimony from those who would be impacted by it. So while I will support the underlying bill, I can't support the amendment.
Do any other senators wish to be heard on the floor amendment? Seeing none, the question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The floor amendment is rejected. Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Yes, I would move the second floor amendment. Move the waiving of the reading of the second floor amendment.
Question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Speaking briefly to the amendment.
Senator, the floor.
In this bill that calls for decriminalization of marijuana and an option for a $50 civil fine, there's also an option in it, the way it's written, for a 20-hour community service in lieu of a fine, which we thought was a little bit very high. And I thought that 5 hours might be more appropriate, commensurate with the $50 infraction. So that's what this does. It just takes 20 hours to 5 hours. And with that, I hope that we'll adopt the amendment.
Question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is adopted. Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
I would now move that the bill be engrossed and passed on to its third reading.
Question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 8, a bill relating to prevailing wage requirement for public works contracts penalty, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with an amendment.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we accept the substitute from Commerce and Labor. And let me just briefly explain. All that did was add to it a $250,000 floor. In other words, it wouldn't kick in on contracts under that, only above that. And I would move that we accept that amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
I would move that we accept the amendment by the Finance and Appropriations Committee. What that did was it added the clause, and so we're going to have to find, if we finance it, we're going to have to find $102,000. So I would move that we accept that.
Thank you, Senator.
Agree to that.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted.
I would
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Just quickly, 26 states have this, so we're not breaking new ground, and the $250,000 ties us with Ohio having the highest floor. So I would move that it be engrossed and advanced to the third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 33, a bill relating to consumer finance companies, loans, licensing, reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell. Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Can that go by temporarily?
Without objection, Senate Bill 33 will go by temporarily.
Senate Bill 36, a bill relating to regulation of casino gambling by Virginia Lottery Board, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute, from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with a substitute. There is a floor substitute and 2 floor amendments.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I move that the committee substitutes be agreed to.
Does the senator first want to reject the substitute from the Committee on General Laws and Technology?
Yes, I do, Mr. President. I am so sorry. I want to, I'm with the recommendation that the substitute be rejected. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on General Laws and Technology be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I move that the committee's substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
This is out of order.
We had a floor substitute from Senator Reeves that's now out of order. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a motion.
Thanks, Senator.
I'd like to withdraw the floor substitute. And speaking to that,
It's out of order.
It's out of order.
It's out of order, but either way.
just withdraw.
Have to speak to it.
All right, Mr. President, I just withdraw the floor substitute.
Thanks, Senator. Without objection, the floor substitute is withdrawn.
One from the pipe to the finance.
Okay. All right. Okay, just to orient everybody, Senator from Prince William County, two floor amendments. One was drawn to the floor sub, which is now out of order, so that one is now out of order. But you do have a floor amendment drawn to the committee substitute, so if the Senator wants to speak to that one.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the amendment be agreed to, and speaking to the motion.
I'm going to waive the reading
waive
first.
the reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the floor amendment be agreed to, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
I wanted to highlight a couple of things, and first off, I appreciate the Senator for Portsmouth work on this. I think this bill has improved over its time, and I think of all the lines within the bill, I've grown more comfortable with a lot of the provisions that she's been working on so diligently. The last 20 lines of the bill still cause a little concern that I wanted to make sure to highlight for the body. And I'm sure folks have reached out to you. And the last 20 lines of the bill are the fifth enactment section of the bill. The section that's before the body is trying to mitigate factors in regards to historical horse track racing and horse track racing itself, which I think is a laudable goal. It is one that I support, figuring out a fix to this fifth enactment. The issue is that in doing so, if you read through the provisions, there are a couple pretty fundamental questions that I wanted to highlight before the body. Certainly, the laudable goal is to, number one, increase purses, to increase the number of horse track races that occur. Right now, I think we're at 15 to 18, based on all the machines and what we've already approved to support the industry. Nothing in this enactment, as you read it, after every referendum for a new casino is passed, increases the number of machines by a multiple, as you'll see in the line, of 600. That's increasing the number of machines by 600, independent of whether a casino actually opens up, by the way. So if a referendum passes, more machines happen, even though there may or may not be any mitigating factors with it. There's a total cap of 2,500 under the provision, so you get additional 2,500 machines. And so the couple of issues is there's nothing in this to say as we increase the machines, we're actually going to increase the number of races. And so we're having a policy put into an enactment that's chasing a goal that's not articulated within the enactment. And I think if we're going to get to the heart of the problem and the heart of what policy solution we're chasing, which is to support the track and to support the horsemen, I think this enactment has veered slightly, and I wanted to make sure to call out to the body that I think there's some solution that this body can come up with. I think the enactment number 5, the last 20 lines of this bill, takes a little bit different approach that I think causes some problems. Those problems are as follows, and these are pretty important to consider. One of which is proposes 1,800 machines additionally to what it's already authorized of 150. This past November, a referendum was passed in a locality in Northern Virginia, and under the administrative rules, 150 machines is what was allowed. And that was publicized to the citizens as a part of the news media in regards to the referendum. So now through this enactment clause, you're going from 150 machines to almost 2,000 machines. That's a pretty big jump. I think we rely on our referendum process, sort of a truth in lending and a truth in what we're telling people we're going to do. That locality rejected a 150 machine application based on traffic concerns. This now boosted almost to 2,000. Now here's a fun fact. 1,800 machines is more machines than the entire state of Kentucky that this enactment clause is putting in one town. The entire state of Kentucky has less machines, and they run the Kentucky Derby. So this is an opportunity to have a pause button, try to fix what we're trying to get at, which is the additional purses to the horsemen to run races in Colonial Downs. That's our goal. This has meandered a little bit off the path, and I think there's an opportunity to maybe increase the number of machines if there's another referendum. I think we need to have an honest discussion about what we're doing, overriding administrative rules that have been set, what's been purported to the public through referendum. Furthermore, in addition to the sort of structural issues in the basically proposed slot casino in Northern Virginia, the JLARC report highlighted some pretty important facts to us and for this body. If this body and the body down the hall were to approve a future Northern Virginia casino, considerable amount of revenue would come from that casino, almost double what's projected off of the 5. By allowing this size operation, this is basically the size of the Horseshoe in Baltimore, to occur, we are creating incumbency, which we will now have to mitigate in the future should the body consider a future Northern Virginia. And I know there's other competing interests also across the river. That is not my concern. I think what is of importance is how this positions our future decisions and whether we're chasing this sort of down the road. And so I think there are a number of different policy considerations that come into play, while I think there are other measures that could considerably assist in mitigating the horsemen, the Colonial Downs, without impacting and taking a statewide approach under this provision that significantly impacts both Dumfries as well as Vinton. I think there are solutions that the body consider, and I hope that the body will continue to contemplate both the context of referendum, the impact of that on the people which voters approved, as well as the other mitigating factors that we can have a successful horse racing condition, Mr. President. And I thank the body for the time to highlight some of these important considerations.
What purpose is Senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Servell, rise.
I got it. There we go. Speaking of the floor amendment.
I think that's a sign.
It is a sign.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I represent the town of Dumfries. And actually, my mother was born in the town of Vinton. And this enactment clause is very important to the town. And it's also important to actually both towns. Just to give you all a little perspective about Dumfries. Dumfries is 5,200 people. It's 1.5 square miles. It's located right on I-95. If you're driving up 95 and you go by the Marine Corps Museum right on the right, as soon as you get past that, you're going by Dumfries. It's the oldest town in Virginia. At one point, it was actually larger than the Port of New York. It's a tobacco port, and they cut down all the trees and it silted in, and it's kind of been a mess ever since. But the town of Dumfries has a median household income of $60,000 per family. Prince William County's median family income is $98,000. The town of Dumfries does not have the tax base the rest of the county has. The town of Dumfries is at the end of a long creek. The Prince William County sends lots of sediment down into the town every year that they've been trying to resolve, but they don't have the tax base or the resources to deal with it. The town of Dumfries has significant needs. They don't have I don't think they have a single child care center in the town. And they have been talking with Colonial Downs now for the last year and a half since we authorized historical horse racing, about the economic development potential that this kind of project would bring to their town. The town council put this on the ballot. It passed 60.4% to 39.5%. Out of the town's 5,000 people, 774 people voted. About 2,000 people in the town are children. They couldn't vote. But they got a pretty healthy turnout, and they approved it. Dumfries desperately needs this. And I was happy to get them on Colonial Downs' radar, which is what got this project focused here. The way I've heard it described by the senator from Portsmouth, this agreement that's been put together between all the stakeholders is a delicate balance. And it's all for one, one for all. And if you read the JLARC report, what it said was that if we do these casinos, historical horse racing is going to take a 40% revenue hit. And so while there may have been policy considerations underlying what we did a year or two or three ago, by throwing 5 casinos into the state, it's kind of changed the nature of the ballgame for these folks. They've come in and they've invested $90 million in Virginia in these facilities. Now all of a sudden we inject a bunch of competition in. And now in order so they don't get their loan called, they need to be able to expand their business model more. And that's what the consideration here is. It's not trying to necessarily fund more purses. It's to make up for what we're doing to them, in part. The last thing I'll say is that I live in Mount Vernon, and I can walk 2 blocks from my house when there's no leaves on the trees. I can look out over the Potomac, and across the river, I can hear this sucking sound. Bright lights and a sucking sound. And that sucking sound is 150 million Virginia tax dollars, 150 million Virginian dollars going across the Wilson Bridge, into Maryland, and into Maryland schools every single year. And one of the reasons I've promised to work with the senator from Portsmouth on this for the last 5 years now is because we need to end that. We need to stop using Virginians to pay for Maryland schools. And by having this facility in the town of Dumfries, we will keep our Virginia dollars in Virginia, create an economic development project in Virginia, which will help this town and help Northern Virginia. And I think it needs to stay in. And if there's concerns, they can continue to be worked on through the process.
For what purpose is Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in emphatic objection to the proposed amendment that would delete enactment 5.
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, probably second only to the senator from Portsmouth, do I have the legislative investment in this legislative process. And I would take you back to last year. But for some legislative maneuvering, we would not be having this discussion. And it ultimately led to the JLARC study. And in fact, I was chairing JLARC at the time that the study was done. That did not influence the outcome of it. But that seemed an appropriate venue to have an objective evaluation made of this. I would say to you, Mr. President, there has been an honest and extensive dialogue within the legislative process about casino gaming coming to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And the gentlelady from Portsmouth is absolutely right. I would remind everyone in this body that it has been a very delicate and a very arduous balance that we have created to get the legislation in the posture that it is currently before you. And in fact, we've had a lot of discussion about enactment number 5. Enactment number 5 has been off. It's been taken off. It's been put on. And that has been a reflection of the legislative process, but it has also been a reflection to the sensitivity of the capital investments that some individuals have come into Virginia and made. And where things got a little more complicated is in the Richmond community. That Revolutionary Racing or Colonial Downs came in and made a substantial investment And they made it unequivocally clear that while they had other satellite facilities around the state, Richmond was their number one investment and their primary market that they wanted protection of. And that, in fact, was what led to some of the compromises on it. Then unexpectedly, one of the tribes comes forward and says, hey, we're going to purchase and maybe have contractually entered into buying some land, and we're going to compete in the Richmond marketplace, which created another uncertainty within the various players that were involved in casino gaming legislation. Let me tell you what my very myopic goal is on this legislation in Senate Bill 36. Very, very narrow. Is to hold the delegate coalition together and pass this bill, Senate Bill 36, just like it is right now, so that we don't have to spend the second half of this session trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again after we have fragmented and fractured it here on the floor of the Senate. Please reject this proposed floor amendment.
For what purpose, Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise to speak to floor amendment.
Senator's the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to associate my comments with the senator from Prince William and why he brought this floor amendment. And if we'd have gotten to my floor amendment or my floor substitute, I think it would address not only what he spoke about, but as far as Colonial Downs and horse racing and doing the right thing by the people to keep that industry alive. But let's not make any mistakes. Let's really talk about what this is about. It's about money. It's about greed. It's about a lot of these things, but it's also about doing the right thing. Mr. President, I will tell you this floor amendment is an attempt to make Colonial Downs and those folks do the right thing, because we know they haven't been doing the right thing. They haven't been running the right days of racing. They, by their own admission, haven't done anything, put any money into gambling addiction, zero. It's kind of like when I tell my son, hey, son, you got to do this. If you do that, you'll get more responsibility. Well, if we know they're not already doing the right thing, yet we're going to give them a bunch more. Make no mistake, this is gambling. I'm looking at revenue sharing agreement between the Virginia Equine Alliance, Virginia Nonprofit Corporation, and this company, Peninsula Pacific, who holds the holdings. They just bought the Hard Rock Sioux City casino. They're a casino. Rosie's is a casino. Okay? It's not about horse racing anymore. If you want to look at how many foals were birthed this year and all those sort of things, the horse people came to us and said, look, we're going to lose horse racing if we don't get parimutuel betting. And we said, we're going to give you that parimutuel betting provided you run a certain amount of races and a certain amount of purses. We still haven't honored that agreement. Now, I appreciate the gentlelady from Portsmouth and her willingness to get to the issue, because the other issue I really care about is what are we going to do about the least, the last, and the lost that are a result of all this gambling that's coming in. And we've set up a fund, but we're still not holding people accountable. Now, I've been assured by the gentlelady from Portsmouth she's going to take it under consideration, and so I agreed to withdraw my floor amendment. But I also want to support the amendment from the senator from Prince William, should it be the pleasure of the body to do that. If not, when we get ready to get this whole thing done, we need to make sure that we are holding people accountable. And I would just say that, Mr. President, that's why I'm in support of the amendment now. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak in opposition to the floor amendment offered by the state senator from Prince William.
Senator, it's the floor.
First of all, as has been already stated, there's a fragile assemblage, Mr. President, of different stakeholders that's been put together, knitted together by the state senator from Portsmouth. And this floor amendment will harm that fragile assemblage of stakeholders. Number two, some people in this body are thinking to themselves, I imagine, what does Colonial Downs and their track have to do with Dumfries and historical racing? If there's anybody that's out there that's thinking about that, it's the following. Remember what Colonial Downs was. It was a shuttered track in New Kent County. Colonial Downs went out there and they spent a total of $300 million and put 1,000 jobs throughout the Commonwealth, and they reopened Colonial Downs. And when they did that, not only did they create all those jobs, but the horse industry in Virginia just blossomed even more. Now, that track in New Kent County is a loss leader. You can't operate it unless you have satellite off-track betting, and that's what they have with Rosie's. Rosie's is in my district, in South Richmond. They want to put one in Dumfries in Senator Serval's district. The only way that track exists in New Kent County is if Colonial Downs has the opportunity to have these satellite betting in other jurisdictions. And that's what they did. And let me just say this. Lots of folks are coming in now because there's a casino license that they want. They want to get it. It's a license to print money, and I say that respectfully. But think of what Colonial Downs did. They went there first. They put their money into it when there was no likelihood, or at least present likelihood, of getting that casino license. They invested hundreds of millions, thousands of jobs, and they only survive if we can put in off-track betting like the one in Dumfries. This amendment, the fifth enactment clause, would destroy that. I'm asking the body to reject the amendment offered by the Senator McPike from Prince William.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor amendment? Senator for Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Just a brief wrap up, Mr. President. I appreciate the body's consideration. Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things just to clarify. Remember, these are not the same tax rates as the casinos. This is under half. I mean, I think the combined between the 1.25% on the handle plus the 5 to 6% to the horseman does not amount to even half of what's proposed in the full tax rate. So I appreciate the senator from Eastern Fairfax stating that all these great goods are coming back, but it's a different product. It's a different structure. So I think we need to moderate sort of our expectations of it. Second point is, the referendum was approved by 161 votes for a massive casino now that bypasses that from 150 administrative rules to almost 2,000. That I think is the fundamental policy question that's really before you. Do you want to change, and do you want to flip that on a people without any due notice or process outside of adding on an enactment clause, which now they have to deal with? The last thing I'll leave you with is, and again, I don't disagree with the comments in support of Colonial Downs. I think there is a way, and I think everybody in this body is interested in getting there. But also, if you look at the enactment right now, there's no provision that if Colonial Downs and Rosie's isn't awarded the casino in Richmond, they still get the 2,500 machines. Talk about your double whammy. So they can get a casino in Richmond and get 2,500 machines across the Commonwealth of Virginia. There's a lot of things that are still built within this enactment that are not as desirable that I think the body thinks it is. And I think there's ways we can fix this as this bill moves forward through the chamber. So I appreciate the body's time, and I renew my motion. Thank you.
Thank the senator. The senator want to be heard on the floor amendment? Before we vote, Senator Lucas, do you want to be heard, or do you want us to vote?
If nobody else chooses to speak, Mr. President,
I think we're all good. So, Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas, on the floor amendment.
I would respectfully request that this body reject that floor amendment. We have had several conversations, honest conversations, about this floor amendment. It has been on and off and on again. It was voted on in finance, and this fifth enactment was put back onto this bill. Mr. President, I have spoken to the senator from Prince Williams several times about this enactment, and he understands that this is a very fragile agreement between the stakeholders that's keeping this bill afloat. His amendment would shred this whole agreement, Mr. President. And there have been too many people working too hard, too many hours on trying to get us to this point. So it would be my hope that this body would reject the floor amendment because it would only destroy this bill, Mr. President. And so with that, I would move that the floor amendment be rejected.
Thank the senator. The question is, does substitute motion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, it's still in the affirmative to adopt the floor amendment, and so move. Respectfully, with her recommendation to be rejected.
Question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
It's a close one. The noes have it. The floor amendment is rejected. Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would move that Senate Bill 36 be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 78, a bill relating to the Virginia Minimum Wage Act, employees paid on the amount of work done. Reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 182, a bill relating to public procurement, public works contract requirements, agreements with labor organizations. Reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute, and there is and then there's a floor substitute.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would. There's a floor substitute. That's the only action on the bill. Other than that, right?
Committee sub.
Well, there's a committee sub and a floor sub.
All right. I would move then that we reject the committee substitute, and with the recommendation that we reject the committee substitute, I would move that we accept the amendment, committee substitute.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The committee substitute is rejected. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
I will yield to Senator Barker for his substitute.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the substitute.
Question is, shall the reading of the substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the substitute is waived. Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the floor substitute, and just to explain briefly what it is.
Senator's the floor.
Senator Saslaw, in presenting this bill at various times, has made clear that what he wants to have incorporated in this bill is that project labor agreements are neither required or prohibited, whether from governments in Virginia, including the state government and all localities across the Commonwealth. What this does is this makes that very clear, that no one can be required or prohibited from establishing a PLA agreement between the political body that has a contract and the people who are bidding on the contract.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Speak to the floor substitute.
Senator's the floor.
Let me be clear. What this does is it dramatically changes the bill that came out of committee. The bill that came out of committee pertains solely to state agencies. It repealed the prohibition on mandating project labor agreements for state agencies. This extends that courtesy, I suppose, to all public bodies in the Commonwealth of Virginia, not just state agencies, but local governments and other governmental agencies of whatever sort in whatever region of Virginia. I know that this has been an issue, particularly in Planning District 8, but those of us in the rest of Virginia, ROVA, as we're increasingly becoming known, don't need this change to this bill. I would ask that it be rejected.
What purpose, Senator from Arlington? Senator Favola, rise.
Speaking to the amendment, Mr. President.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand to speak in support of the amendment. Again, this is permissive. This is not going to be a mandate across the Commonwealth. Now I refer you to line 14. It does refer to any authority, board, bureau, commission, district, or agency of the Commonwealth. So we're talking about subdivisions, like our cities and towns and localities. And I would just mention that when contractors are competing through this request for a proposal project, if in fact the authorizing agency, I don't know if it's a town council or a city council, if they are asking that a project labor agreement be part of the response to the proposal, then everybody who's responding to the proposal would be expected to have a PLA. So there would be that even level playing field because it could be part of a proposal. So I see no harm in this. Do no harm. This does no harm. So I think the amendment's a good step forward.
Let's see. Do you want to? Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, speaking the bill, I'm glad the gentlelady from Arlington sees no harm. I do.
And the senator, for what purpose, Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise.
Mr. President, to respond to a couple of the issues that have been raised.
Senator's the
and
floor.
To explain things. What happened was, in terms of the drafting of the bill that Senator Sasslaw was carrying, inadvertently and unbeknownst to him, it had language that would have allowed a requirement that someone had to bid for a project labor agreement. What this does is this removes it. And if you look at line 37 on there, the operator, the local government or state government, it would have to ensure that neither the bid specifications, project agreements, nor other controlling documents, et cetera, shall require or prohibit bidders, offerers, contractors, or subcontractors to enter into or adhere to agreements with one or more labor organizations on the same or related projects. And in other sections, and also in Section 2, on lines 42 to 44, it makes it very clear that this would not allow anyone to be able to, any local government or state government operation, to be able to either require or to prohibit a contract bidders to provide for a project labor agreement, so that they would have the ability to offer that if they wanted to, but no one would be required or prohibited from doing that. And so this makes it very clear that that's what was when this is consistent with what says the senior senator from Fairfax had intended all along.
Thanks, Senator. Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
I would just hope that we would accept the substitute from Senator Barker.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
I now move that the substitute, Senate Bill 182, be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 199, a bill relating to the conduct of charitable gaming, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations with a substitute.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, I move that we accept the substitute from the General Laws and Technology Committee.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
All right. With a recommendation that it be accepted, I move the substitute from the Finance and Appropriations Committee.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we engross and advance to its third reading this measure.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 203, a bill relating to redistricting, Virginia Redistricting Commission, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with the substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
What I'd like to do now, Mr. President, before we take up 203, is request a 15-minute recess. And if we can do it sooner, we will. But I would move for a recess of 15 minutes.
Without objection, Senate will stand in recess for 15 minutes.